Tonight, we welcome back Los Angeles-based artist Robyn O'Neil, who delivered an insightful and entertaining Tuesday evening presentation in the spring of 2013. I think some of you were here for that, which I believe that lecture was shortly after the modern acquired These Final Hours, Embrace at Last, This Is Our Ending, This Is Our Past, which is the piece that is on the first floor in Gallery 1. It was a gift in honor of the longtime friend of the museum, George Young Sr. It's a very special piece. It's impressive, and as I said, it's hanging in that first gallery on the first floor. It's in a prime spot. As can be seen in that piece, Final Hours, Robyn's work is known for its dystopian subjects in carefully rendered drawings that range from monumental to intimate. But regardless of the scale, these pieces pull the viewer in closer for engagement with their suggested narratives. I am always taken aback by Robyn O'Neil's ever-burgeoning resume. Never surprised, but reminded what a conscientious, hardworking, and justifiably recognized artist she is. Her educational pursuits reflect her passion and intellectual curiosity as she began her education studying British art and architecture in 1997 at King's College in London, before settling on the study of art. After a BFA at Texas A&M University in Commerce in 2000, she entered the graduate program at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and opportunities followed. As the 2009 Huntington Prize recipient, Robyn could then focus on her studio full-time. And in 2010, she was accepted in Werner Herzog's Rogue Film School in Los Angeles, where she created the film We the Masses, for which she received a Frameworks grant from the Irish Film Board and was awarded the 2012 Spirit Award at the Brooklyn Film Festival. Represented in Dallas by Tally Dunn Contemporary, Robyn's exhibition record is notable. She is shown consistently and broadly throughout her career. Somewhat early on, her work was included in the 2004 Whitney Biennial. Her most recent group exhibitions and projects include Werewolf, curated by Nick Brown at the Charlie James Gallery in Los Angeles, Drawing Conclusions at RISD Museum in Providence, Rhode Island, and The Great Kansas Sea at Harvest Arts in Wichita, Kansas, all in 2016, which stuns me. She had that many solo exhibitions just last year. And then there is Multiverse, Stories of This World and Beyond at Kemper at the Crossroads in Kansas City, Missouri, and Picture Show of the Mind, a tribute to the teachings of Lee Baxter Davis at Meadows Museum in Shreveport, Louisiana, and that was in this year, in 2017. Her most recent solo exhibitions include Robyn O'Neil, The Good Herd at Susan Inglett Gallery, where her work is represented in New York in 2017, and On the Horizon, which I understand actually opens this coming week or next month at the SICA in North Carolina. This was news to me. This wasn't on her bio when I got it. So, but anyway, that show, I think, was originally organized and will be in Lincoln, Nebraska at the Sheldon Museum of Art in 2018. And the title of that exhibition, which I find very interesting, is Robyn O'Neil, Something Vanished Over Paradise. I always love Robyn's titles. They say so much about the work, and I think about her. Robyn has received numerous awards and grants and her work is in significant private and public collections throughout this country. While this introduction is quite insufficient, as Robyn is an amazingly productive artist with an impressive career, we are here tonight to celebrate her recent publication, Robyn O'Neil, 20 Years of Drawings, which I hope you were able to acquire and have signed tonight. I know those that did got something very special in the way of a note and sometimes a drawing. In addition to, of course, the book signing and the celebration of the book, we have the lecture tonight, which is in relation to, related to the book and those drawings. It is such a pleasure to have Robyn back. I think maybe we should do this every 4 or 5 years. Just go ahead and put it on the schedule. So if you would, please join me in welcoming Robyn O'Neil.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, all of you. Uh-oh, I've got a voice thing. Who knew? Thank you guys for being here. I've got a lot of special people who I love in the audience. And if I didn't already love you, I'm going to love you starting now, if you don't mind. Making all sorts of friends tonight. Okay. So I'm going to launch right into my materials. As some of you guys know, I use only a mechanical pencil, like from just your regular office supply store. And one other thing, and that's a 0.5, so it's small, and really, truly, I just order a bunch of lead and use that, and that's it. And then this is what I call a smudge stump. They're called tortillions, I guess, but my good old mom got that for me when I was in 7th grade. I can't see where you are, Mom, but thank you. I've had that same thing since 7th grade. It has glassine, which is like a wax paper on top of it because of my greasy, sweaty hands. But it's just rolled paper, so any of the soft clouds or shadows you see me do are all because of this. God, it's like 30 years of patina of graphite or something at this point. I don't travel with it. I leave it at home because I'm paranoid about it leaving. New ones don't work the same. So what happened, kind of speaking back to the pencil, I came into graduate school in Chicago as somebody making large-scale paintings that were really colorful and fun-looking and goofy, and I don't know, they had monsters in them. When I think back, I kind of hate all of those, but anyway, but I thought they were really cool at the time. And when I got to UIC, I noticed maybe I wasn't as impressive as I thought I was back in Texas or something. And one of my studio visits with this female professor, an artist, Susan Inglett, she came in and she was trying to be nice about it, but she basically, I could tell she didn't like the paintings. But I always, as often artists do, have a little side area kind of near your light switch or something of little sketches or little inspiration. It's like your inspiration section, and what that was were my drawings that were just pencil drawings. And I had a lot of them, but I didn't consider them my work. And she said, hey, I hate to tell you this, but these little things that you don't think are your work are 1,000,000 times better than your work. So, and then she dared me to she said, don't pick up a paintbrush for 6 months. And as you'll see later, I've been painting since I was like 4 years old with oil paints. So that was like radical for me, and I'm also kind of more ballsy than this normally, but I was like, okay, I just did whatever she said for some weird reason. And that was in the year 2000, I think. So I haven't really looked back since then. So that's how I started working with pencil. Because once I started doing it, it really worked for me immediately for a lot of reasons. I started by drawing, this guy's name was Diamond LaRusso, because I love The Karate Kid, so I named someone after the main character of The Karate Kid. But these were based on, I was just thinking, I was in graduate school, this guy's name's Miami Dave. I was missing what I like to call just normal guys. Being in art school was very difficult for me. I'm not really comfortable being around all artists. I just never have been. I don't know why, it's just how it is. And I grew up in Nebraska, and so being a part of the Midwest, I kind of think of my guys as people like John Goodman's character Dan Connor on Roseanne. And so I don't know why I focused in on these kind of guys, and I just kind of kept going. And then I had them doing, just kind of goofing around, doing calisthenics, throwing balls into nowhere for some reason, skiing. And they were the same couple of guys for a while. And then these are just a couple of my friends I thought you guys would like to see. These are not a couple of my friends. I don't know anybody who looks like this. What happened was I was really on a roll in Chicago making these drawings of all of those men in sweatsuits. And one day I needed help. I didn't have any friends really, so I needed help from someone in my building. I lived in a high-rise to help me move a couch up the stairs or up the elevator or whatever. I just needed help. So it sounds really frightening now looking back, but I put a sign in the laundry room that I drew with like a muscle guy saying, I need a guy with muscles to help me move my couch on whatever day. I'll buy you a pizza if you can help me. And that's so creepy because I put my apartment number and everything. I'm really dumb, you know. But anyway, one day, two guys I don't have a photo of them, but they looked just like this except they had shirts on. They came to my door and they were like, we'll help you. And they were brothers and I could tell they were good guys. So they helped me and then they became my friends in the building. And they were just so nice. And then one day, sadly, I'm sorry, I'm about to really turn this conversation. But one day I was walking down into the lobby to go to somewhere on a Friday night. And as I entered the lobby, one of the brothers was just like bawling inconsolably and had some girlfriend crying. And the door lady was calling the cops. And I just, you know these moments when you're not to be involved and you know when you are to be involved, and I knew to keep walking, and so I kept walking, and as I go out the door to my left, the other brother had just committed suicide by jumping off of the building. And so my impetus to make these drawings that I was making before was out of just kind of being a smart ass amongst the people in my program making goofy, fun drawings. And then when I saw that, I mean, I just haven't grown up seeing death like that. It really changed things, and immediately my drawings started to change, and I started to realize that, I mean, you can see there's like a dead guy now, and a lot of the guys who are standing up are all horizontal now, so it really affected my time in Chicago and affected the development of my work, and I realized I did need a backdrop, so finally they're not just like blank snow scenes. There are things with like bombs dropping, situations got darker. And I kept doing that for a while, and then I dropped out of graduate school, which feel free to ask me about anytime because I love talking about it. And I left, and I came back to Texas, and I quickly, by some miracle, got an opportunity to go to Art Pace. And they showed me, and I had been working on this drafting table that's made for like fourth graders. And all my drawings were this big. And they showed me the dimensions of my new studio I would have. Art Pace is a residency in San Antonio, for those of you that don't know. And it's like the size of this room. And I was going, I can't just pin up a bunch of drawings. What am I going to do? And then I realized I've always loved Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights, and I wanted to make my own version of it. So I scaled up for the first time, and I was going to make a triptych because it's a triptych. And so this was kind of the thing about it, though, is that as I scaled up, one would think I would make, the guys are this big, that's how big they are. You would think I would then draw the guys bigger, but I'm a little dumb, so I didn't even think of that. I just was like, oh no, I'll just make my life impossible, and I will make them the same size. And it's kind of, I just tend to do things that make everything a little bit harder for me, but it is what it is. It's just who I am. There's the piece finished. It's called Everything That Stands Will Be at Odds with Its Neighbor, and everything that I don't even know anymore. Forget it. Terry, I know you love my titles, but I've lost my mind tonight. Don't worry about it. And keep in mind, again, this is everything I'm showing you, except for this short chapter that you'll see in a while. They're all mechanical pencil. They're all that 0.5 mechanical pencil and my mom's smudge stump. Here is a close-up of it. In Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights, there's like sex, frolicking, and fun stuff, but not with me. They just throw up and do awful things. If you're wondering why they all have sweatsuits on, they all have black sweatsuits with Nike tennis shoes. Sometimes, for a while, they had like Adidas too, but for the most part, Nikes. I didn't know this at the time. You know, as an artist, sometimes the impetus comes first. You like, okay, I like something, I'm gonna make work about this, like Hieronymus Bosch. But other times there's elements where you just do something and then later, years later, you realize, oh, that's what I was doing. This is an image of the Heaven's Gate cult. They were a group of people in San Diego. In 1997, they committed mass suicide because they believed they were gonna, if they did it at a certain time, they were going to rise into the sky on a extraterrestrial spaceship that followed Comet Hale-Bopp. But this is, and I was so obsessed with this story when this happened, for whatever reason. Well, mainly because they all put on these outfits before they committed suicide like this and shrouded themselves in these. So that's, later I realized, oh, I was just drawing those guys. And I needed a way to unify them. So that's where that came from. You can see that, you know, death is definitely a theme that you're gonna see the whole time. I also hope you can tell that I draw animals and nature more naturalistically than I draw humans. I mean, let me go back. The humans look kind of dumb, right? They look clunky, they look awkward, they look, they're just not drawn very well purposefully. And the animals are drawn, I mean, I'm not giving myself a compliment, but much more beautifully. And I doubt I have to explain why that is. I like animals better than people. There, I said it. This is another, so, you know, a lot of the reason these big pieces are multi-paneled is because I love altarpiece paintings from art history, specifically pre-Renaissance and some Renaissance altarpiece paintings. And I'm also Catholic. I grew up Catholic. So there's something that's just sort of, it just resonates with me in something like in my blood from thousands of years ago or something. And so this next big piece I made, I kept thinking about why I wanted to do these on a large scale, and I like thinking about, I have an issue with crowds and being around a lot of people. And again, I was thinking back to my time in Chicago, living in that high rise, and how I would be focused on all the things happening behind each door as I walk down my hallway. And I do this all the time, where I need to do it now, looking at all of you, all the different things your heads are thinking about right now. And it's so varied. No matter, we're all sitting here doing the same thing, but there's no telling what's going on with all of you. And so the way I set up my drawings is that at this time when there's so much happening is I like to think, well, I was just thinking about that hallway again, like behind one door, there could be two cute little 15-year-old kids falling in love for the first time, and then behind the next door, there could be a 73-year-old widow making her mom's spaghetti carbonara recipe to remember her, and then the next door, you know there's gonna be a murderer plotting something crazy, and then in the basement, there's something else. So it's this sort of paranoia and anxiety that I feel about being alive on this planet. That's where a lot of this is coming from, unfortunately for me, and you, since you have to look at it. This is the center of that piece. This buffalo stands as sort of the god of the drawing, but it's also this bittersweet stance, because you see this beautiful guy is up there on a cliff that he can't get out of, can't get down from, and who knows how he got there. And all that fur that I drew is not buffalo fur, that's from my old cat, Kinney. I just stared at her and drew her fur because it's pretty much the same thing. You can see they kind of have this cult-like behavior when they're together. Oh, this I put in as my reminder. This is somebody giving birth, I think, from some movie. But because I always forget to say, and then at the end everybody was like, why are there no women? So I only drew men early on. I knew this was going to be an apocalyptic story. I kind of came up with that idea. And so I knew that because as harsh as this sounds, I knew I wanted to kill all of these characters off eventually. So I couldn't throw women in because you know how you humans act. You're going to procreate, and then there's going to be more chance for survival, and I wasn't going to give that chance to my drawing. So no babies, no kids, no women. That's why there's only men. I just wanted to put this up here too because, you know, prehistoric art and cave paintings are probably my biggest influence, other than one other thing I'm going to talk about in a bit. Just because what I try to do and what is important to me at the guts of me is to just do what they were doing, which, you know, there's all sorts of theories, but to use rudimentary materials to just try to describe what it's like for us and other animals to live on this planet. It's really simple. And it's important to me to say that because I want to make work for people without any art background as much as I do with people like me who are obsessed with art and learn about it. So I hope that comes through. Here's another, this is a piece. Tally, is it still up in the gallery?
Going to North Carolina.
Oh, I forgot. It's going to be in that show. Well, thank you for answering. So this piece was just here, and this was one of my favorite multi-paneled pieces. It's called Oh, How the Heartless Haunt Us All. And at the top, you can kind of see birds of prey. When I lived in Houston, that's a really major bird watching city. And I was really into it, and I had a big yard that I could do that. Birds of prey mate in a free fall, and so when they're connected to each other, they fall and cartwheel down while they're mating, and then oftentimes fall and die together while that happens. So that's what they're all doing up there. And then you see these psychotic men standing staring at you in this dead tree, and this was my first hell scene. So that bottom panel is pretty... It's pretty terrifying. In the book, if you guys get the book, there's a nice close-up of that Brian Gibb made sure to put in there. Thank you, Brian. What's my next one? Oh, yeah, sometimes I'm a little more positive. You can see my personality is more positive than a lot of my work, but sometimes my work is. This is called As Darkness Falls on This Heartless Land, My Brother Holds Tight My Feeble Hand. And this one is just purely about love and connection. Every one of those guys is hugging another guy. They've never been nice to each other until this drawing came around. And even those trees are in an embrace up there. So that's a sweeter one. And there are quite a few sweet ones, even though I talk about the bad ones a lot. This is called Lost Landscape with Rainbow. I made this as a tribute to this painting by Caspar David Friedrich, because this painting got stolen at some point, and even though I had never even gotten to see it in real life, I was upset about it. So I made this drawing, and then it got on the cover of this literary magazine, and the day that got published and put out in the world, this thing got found. Can you believe it? So I'd like to say that I had something to do with it. I didn't. Also, it's really embarrassing to see these next to each other, like how amazing that painting is next to my drawing. I mean, I like my drawing, it's fine, but that's what it's all about. Okay, this one's called Being There. Another thing that I haven't just said flat out that's obvious is that I make narrative work up, obviously. And so Lee Baxter Davis, who Terry mentioned in the beginning, my dear professor, drawing professor from East Texas, he taught us, he's a narrative artist as well, and he taught us about how narrative work is labyrinthine, meaning you never know where it's going to take you. You have this plan, you kind of have this set of characters or whatever, but you may take a left turn when you least expect it, and then you make a drawing that's over here on a cul-de-sac. I don't know if this is making any sense, because Lee didn't make a lot of sense to me at first, but then as years of me making work, it did make sense. So basically this was me planting seeds. I put these two men up on that cliff like they were two survivors, and they were going to somehow fall in love, and I was going to let them procreate somehow. I don't know how that was going to happen, but I was going to make sure it did. And I haven't done that yet, but that was based on this Charlotte Perkins Gilman short story called Herland, or it's a novella that I really liked about this land full of all women and how powerful they were all together, but I just was going to do it with my guys. And here's just another really big one. These are about 15 feet long by 8 feet tall. These are just these men falling from the clouds. I would tell you this story, but it's a really long story, so I'm not going to do it. This is me painting with oils with my brother, my grandmother, and my dad, and I have my dad and his sister here tonight. So I wanted to show this and this. This was the best parts of my life. My grandmother is the one who taught me to be an artist, and I can't tell you how amazed I am that I don't know how to describe it. I got a really lucky upbringing in this way. And she passed away a little over about 10 years ago. And when she died, I made this piece as a tribute to her. And so that's, all these people are in a funeral march heading up to, I don't think there's a close-up, but there's a funeral there. And all of the men have flowers that they're bringing to the gravesite, even though how are they getting flowers in this snow? I don't know. I allowed a miracle to happen. Then this is another drawing that was shown here at Tally Dunn, and this is called The Passing, and this is my other tribute, an ode to my grandmother, Grandma Ginny. And I dedicated this book as well, if you guys got the book. The whole book's dedicated to her, and this is, I don't think I need to explain it. That's her soul leaving her body, and probably my favorite piece that I ever made. I just want to show you guys how I work. For any young artists out there who think you got to have something special, I just work in my second bedroom of every home I've ever lived in. You can see this is a regular old suburban house with a carpet and everything. I don't know what the deal is with that lighting. This is a very weird photo, but normally I have better lighting. I must have been delirious. So it's also my drawings. If you've seen the one here, you can see how big it is. My walls are only so big, and so I have to get in weird contorted positions in order to make them. I'm going to read you guys this Philip Guston quote, actually, because I have it. Because I love all of this. I love the struggle of it. I love doing this all day, every day. It's what I live for, truly. And some of you will know this experience. When you're in the studio painting, there are a lot of people in there with you. Your teachers, friends, painters from history, critics, and one by one, if you're really painting, they walk out. And if you're really painting, you walk out. And for artists, that's what happens. You kind of get into a real weird zone when you're doing it as much as I do it when I make something like this. This is called Masses and Masses Rove a Darkened Pool. Never is there laughter on this ship of fools. You guys may know Ship of Fools is a reference in so many songs and poetry and various other things. In medieval times, they would, when they deemed people insane, they would just send them out on real shitty rafts like this and let them try to survive, which is horrible. So that's what I did to my men, I guess. So I'm horrible too. I was getting sick of drawing the men. I was ready to figure out a way for it to end, and I didn't know how, but I thought, you'll notice, it all started in this snowy world with mountainscapes and everything. The horizon line was tall. Then it got pastoral and lower, and then water started to creep in. This is also an environmental story. And so then water just took over, and these guys, this is all they've got at this point. And they're just clamoring to survive, basically. This is also how I do it. This is how I make my drawings, is I watch a whole lot of TV. And these are all of my favorite TV shows and my favorite movie, Karate Kid. Because a lot of you students out there, if you are out there, that's my main question I get is like, how do you sit there all the time? And it's because I just listen to TV shows constantly. So that's my only key to finishing things, I think. You can see the sky is drawn just like the waves. It's just a larger version. And then my tree trunks are the same thing too, just tilted this way. So it's kind of a little bit of a weird, just an invented texture that I've made that works for pretty much everything I draw. And here's the piece I'm so lucky it's here. These final hours embrace at last. This is our ending. This is our past. So after those men were sent off into the ocean, there was one last man alive, and I kind of wanted to make it an end without a real clear conclusion. And so depending on your attitude, if you're a depressive, like me, you may see him falling into the ocean, or if you're an optimist, which I've met a few tonight, who believe he's crawling up to heaven. But that's exactly why I did it that way. He is hanging. Here's a close-up. Well, no, that's the size of it. That's Lee Baxter Davis. And there he is. So, you know, the rope's fraying. We'll see. I don't know what's happening. Another thing that occurred, this was another one of those, oh yeah, that's where that came from. I love this piece. This is Winslow Homer's The Lifeline. And this is just the lithograph for it. The painting is in Philadelphia, but I loved this piece so much. So I know that's kind of where that came from, that idea of that image came from. And then since the people were done, I had this short period of time where I was working with these images without people that were just a little bit more mysterious and a little, a little more open to conclusion, I guess. This piece is called The Ruin. And I was also thinking of these big square pieces as, like, my big pieces feel like novels to me. I'm a big reader, and I like trying to think about my work in literature terms. The big ones are like novels with so many things happening. The kind of big ones are more like a chapter or something. And then the really small ones, which I make a lot of, are fragments of poems or something like that. And you know, I like to be baffled. I realized after I made all this work that made so much sense in this clear narrative, when I look at work, I love to be jarred out of understanding. And so this is another good piece. This is one of my favorite pieces I've ever made as well. And people often ask me, like, well, what's going on with that guy? What's that thing on his head? Why does he have, did you just mess up the head and draw over it? And that's not what happened, by the way. But I don't know the answer. But I totally trust this image as a solid image. So that kind of thing is okay as well. Oh, and let the master speak for me. David Lynch was asked, or no, said, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film. The interviewer asked him to elaborate on that, and he said no. So you can do that. We all can do that. Oh God, and here we go. So then I had this horrible idea of making this biggest, craziest drawing ever. I was like, oh my God, I can't wait. I did my animation project, so I was kind of reconnected to my little guys because I had to draw so many guys for the animation because it was telling that whole story of them living and dying. And then it feels like muscle memory for me drawing those guys. It's so easy, it's comfortable. So then I got this idea, okay, they're dead, but what if we see what they're like in hell? So this is gonna be my hell scene, which, you know, there's a rich history of paintings about hell, and there's a rich history of literature and epic poems about hell, so I felt like I had to do it. And I remember, this is a pretend photo of my mom and me telling my mom that I wanted to do this, and my mom kind of started to cry on the photo. I was like, guess what, I'm gonna do the craziest shit ever. This is gonna take me forever, and it's gonna kill me while I make it. She was like, Robyn, you cannot do that. Don't do that, please don't do that. And I did it anyway. So because the craziest part is most of it has these little cutout, drawn and then cut out and then glued on, and they're so little. They ended up being half that size, actually. This is just the temporary one. And glued on with tweezers because my fingers, which are very small, aren't small enough to glue them on. That was my little test. And this was what the piece ended up looking like 3 years later. It's about 10 feet tall by like 17 feet wide. And that tower in the middle you see there, that is the tower of all those monks. There's over 35, that's an install shot, but there's over 35,000 of those little monks drawn, cut out, and glued on. And I had a lot of volunteers, my friends and family helped me. What did you guys help me with? Cut them out. Yeah, because that was what I got help with, it was so many things. So I'd send envelopes home to my mom to cut them out and stuff. And it was truly insane. You can see it kind of looks like snake skin up close. And it's a really haunting drawing, and a lot of terrible things are happening. Oh yeah, even the ferns that are at the top, you'll see when I show the full picture again, I could have just drawn them and it would have been normal, but I didn't. I drew them, and then I did this crazy thing with miniature scissors to make them collaged for some reason. Again, I'm Catholic. I don't know if I was torturing myself. I really don't know. This many years later, it's still hard for me to kind of understand. I'm a much healthier person now. But the fact is, this is what I did. This is what I did for 3 years. I worked 18-hour days every day for those 3 years, except for 12 days. And that is not a lie. That is a fact because I kept logs of it. And even though there were only 35,000 of the little monks, there were over 65,000 figures on this drawing total. So there it is. There's my best friend right there. I mean, I like the drawing. I really do. And it's about to be shown at that Sika show again. So that's really good. But it pains me. It messed me up for a while. I think I took it to a crazy level. And so then I needed to kind of calm down and make small work and not really work in the same way for a while. So I started to, and I was lost a bit, to be frank with you. I was kind of figuring it out. These are all small. Like that piece is this big. It's like made from a remnant of a piece of paper. And it's actually much more beautiful than it looks here. These little cubes. I was thinking these cubes were going to be my stand-in for something. This was supposed to be a dedication to the brain of this writer I love. So it's called The Brain of David, and those cubes. And the reason I did that, this is a piece I made when I was in kindergarten, and that was my first art award that I got for this piece called Ride in the Night. And we still have it, and in my opinion, it looks exactly like my work. I don't know if you guys think, I mean, really, it's basically something I would just make right now. So I was looking back on that, and then I decided to mix powdered graphite with oil pastel, and I started to really get somewhere with that, and this is just called Red Sky. And this is another really small piece, but I thought powerful, and I wanted things to be empty and still be landscapes for the most part. And these were, you know, what I call psychological landscapes, which is a term I got from my drawing professor, again, Lee Baxter Davis. But they were, again, pretty haunting and dark. And then I started to really kind of go, well, first of all, I was trying to form a new world. The thing with me is that I need to work with a world made up by me, and then you'll see I also need to work with figures. And I didn't know that yet, but these were not mistakes. This is just something you have to go through when you put yourself through a literal hell. And then just a lot of things were going on with that. But then one day, and if you got the little magazine that Brian Gibb brought from Archon Projects, you will see that you can read that. And one day, I don't know why, I went to a salad bar, and I was eating the salad bar, and it had peas in it. And I love peas in salad, and when I ate the pea, I suddenly realized I missed my mechanical pencil, and I'm going back to it. And so then I made this drawing called The Five Echoes, and it was a little bit bigger. Basically, I'm like getting my muscles back going, like I can do this again. I can get back into it. And so you can see I'm kind of trying to form worlds together, kind of thinking about tectonic plates and that kind of thing. So that's what's going on here. Thank God for those peas, honestly, because just looking at these, I feel so much better. But then I did that for just a little while, and really I'm just coming back to myself in the last year. Then I'm looking at art history always, and I always make myself little books of my favorite paintings, favorite sculptures. And Albrecht Altdorfer, this is his piece, and if you can see, those are all little figures down there. This is an amazing painting with so many little figures stuck together. Crowds, I missed crowds. I like drawing crowds of people, even though I hate crowds of people. So once that occurred to me, I realized, well, here I go again. I'm gonna start making big drawings again with a lot of stuff. It's gonna take a lot of time. And I started to draw these heads, these crowds from behind. And I made this first one called Ultra Light Beam Terzetto. That's a shout out to Kanye West, if any of you guys know it. Thank you. That might be nobody, except maybe two over there. And then I made a few more, and I'm figuring it out. And this one's called the Everywhere Citadel. And what I'm doing here too is like, all right, I'm back with my pencil. And I don't know how to describe it other than I'm kind of self-referential in some of these. So I'm figuring out ways to work with the imagery I work with, but not in the same way. And so that's what was going on there. And I knew if I kept plowing through that and looking at my favorite people in art history, I was going to get somewhere really new and really strong. And George Tooker is a figurative painter who I love, who nobody ever talks about. And by the way, if you're a curator or a student of art history, please know who George Tooker is, because every time I get somebody in my studio lately, when I say his name, they don't know him. And that's another George Tooker piece. And then I saw these as I was making those pieces you just saw, and I figured it out, and I figured I really, really needed the figure to be prominent again. And I made this piece with these two heads, and this is one of the better pieces I've made in a long time. And again, it's about being close to people and being kind of engulfed in what's around you in your environment, and that's exactly what I'm about, and that's exactly what makes me anxious, and I think that's what makes some of my work good. So that was a really great success for me. And then this is a Philip Guston piece, believe it or not. He got commissioned to do naval illustrations. So this was a demonstration of flotation devices. And I have a picture of this in my studio that I've had for like 10 years up in my studio. And I wanted to draw an underwater scene with my guys, and this is this thing called the Holcomb Bible from the early 1300s, and that underwater scene has been inspiring me for years too, but I could never figure out a way for me to do it. And this is what became of that. This is kind of my version of that. So again, back to my obsession with graphite. And then after I did that, I did 2 big versions of what you just saw. So this one is again about, I don't know, 7.5 feet by 5.5 feet or something. Just heads and heads and heads and water and water and water and then cliffs and rocks and cliffs and rocks and men. And it doesn't look great. I mean, it doesn't look positive. They're not in a good place right there. And then, long story short, I got really ill. Starting in March, I haven't been well at all. And I could barely really work, but I wanted to do something, and I wanted to brighten my spirits. And this is Goya's Colossus, and I always wanted to make a version of it. So I made this is one of the only pieces I made this year, or this summer. And this is called George Michael Finds a Friend in Heaven. And so that's my version of Goya's Colossus, and I really loved making that. However, back to this period, which is still really important, it's still a part of my life. Now I'm kind of feeling better and hoping to continue to get better health-wise. When I had people in my studio and at my shows, everybody was like, whoa, this is really Catholic imagery. And I did not mean for that to be that way. But once I looked, I was like, yeah, it really is very Catholic of me, after I heard it like 15,000 times. And I was reminded of this show I did years ago in Los Angeles before I lived there, where I wanted to make this room. I make all my shows based on the size, like the parameters of the space. I develop what drawings I'm going to make. And with this piece, this show, I wanted it to look like a chapel. And so I never show images of this for some weird reason, but I wanted to tonight because I just think it's kind of fun to share raw new ideas. As I'm almost done, by the way, I promise. But my thought is that the next thing I'm going to work on, because I'm, again, maybe my mom's going to cry and tell me to not do this either. Thinking of all the chapels in art history that I love, of course, this is Rothko Chapel in Houston. George Tooker actually made a chapel I think this is in Vermont, and I always saw images of this and got inspired by it, obviously, this multi-panel thing. But look at how tiny it is. I didn't realize that. I was like, I can top that. Watch what I'm going to do. My plan really is, and this is Stanley Spencer's chapel. This is in Hampshire, England. That just blows my mind. They had to kind of change it a bit. Here's kind of what parts of it look like now, but still, please look this up if you haven't seen images of it. And then, of course, Giotto's amazing chapel in Italy. But my thought is that I kind of feel built to do something like this, and having the opportunity to look through the history of my work, because I was so fortunate to have Brian make this book of my work, has me thinking so differently and so clearly about who I am as an artist and what I'm about and what I'm capable of, as long as I can stay alive a little bit longer. And so, anyway, this I made today on my phone because I am really serious. If anybody ever, just spread the word. I don't know where this chapel is going to be. I think it should probably be Catholic. If you know the Pope or any priest for that matter, this is something I would be willing to work on this until I'm like 90 years old, if given the opportunity to live that long. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. But what I want to close with, because I have a little time and we'll still have plenty of time for questions, but because I've talked about a lot of the ups and downs of my life and career, and I'm very okay with being vulnerable in front of people and being honest always, I just love this quote from Louis C.K. I think this is from an interview from him, and I think it's good for everybody to hear. The only way to learn this stuff is by failing. All this is learned by having bad times. You have to be willing to have a bad time. People who need to feel like a star and like they're succeeding every time will not ever get better. But if you're willing to feel bad, do badly, have a stale, boring version of yourself out in front of everybody, you can find this stuff in the muck that's very useful. All right. And that's all I've got, you guys. Thank you. You. So we do have time for questions, right? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to put this on George Michael's butt. Anybody? Yeah.
You said something about your tools, your pencils, and your smudge stick. Tell us about your paper.
Oh, yeah. The paper, for the most part, all the paper you've seen is from a really big roll of paper that's just called Legion paper. It's a nice, thick, cold-pressed paper, so it doesn't have much texture to it. That's right about cold-pressed paper, right? Yeah. God, all of a sudden I thought, am I saying that right? It's just my favorite paper, really thick, heavy-duty. And then recently, you can kind of see I've turned on the bright white, and I really like these tan papers. This is called Fawn, and I can't remember the brand, sorry, but I like these. I don't like that bright white paper anymore for some reason, so that's kind of recent, but yeah. Just really nice, high-quality paper. That's seriously, pretty much my only expense besides it when I have to pack stuff up or something. And glassine. My hands really are real sweaty, so I always have to put stuff under. I never touch my paper at all. So that's the other technical little key for you. How about you?
I just wanted to get your comments on your website and your approach to the internet and social media.
Did you see my new website with all the Heaven's Gate stuff on it? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, I don't know how new it is, but I saw your website recently and I thought it was interesting because of all the readings and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, by the way. He's referring to, I've sort of accidentally embraced social media and certain technologies that I never thought I would. I have a podcast, you guys, called Me Reading Stuff, and it's just a 10-minute snippet of me in my studio where I just kind of talk like normal and then include little pieces of, kind of like I just did the Louis C.K. thing. But a lot of times it's from literature or poetry. And that, weirdly, I never thought it would. I was just doing that for myself, and I don't really know why, because I like talking into the void. I love a one-sided conversation. I talk to myself, I talk into my phone. I could talk nonstop if I'm alone. It's weird. So, and I always loved radio. I always listen to talk radio. So I just started to do it, and I looked up a YouTube video, how to make a podcast, and I think he was like a 10-year-old kid in a 5-minute clip taught me how to do it. I was like, all right, and I kind of stumbled around. I've been doing it for a long time now. And it ends up being like it's downloaded a lot. So that's helped bring a lot of people to my work, though. Half of the sales of my last show in New York were from people who listened to that podcast, believe it or not, are not even in the art world. So it's been kind of interesting, because I don't really talk about art on it at all. I very rarely talk. I just kind of mention I'm drawing sometimes. And then, I kind of have fun with Instagram and Twitter. I've been on Twitter a long time. And for me, I need connection, but I need it to be, again, when I'm alone. I like that kind of connection. So it works for me. It really does. And, I get to express things. And I'm a real I love show and tell. Like if adulthood was like show and tell when we were kids, I try to make it that way. So that's what I use it for, basically. Thank you. Thanks for asking. Yes.
Will you ever go back to color or softer lines and that kind of thing that I'm sure you probably did when you were younger?
Yeah. There's no telling. And I used to make so many rules for myself, and I was big about that. When I set out, when that woman told me to just draw, I didn't only say, okay, I'll just draw, because she didn't mean just with a pencil. I could have used India ink. I could have done anything. But I like setting up real tight parameters, and I do actually believe that huge things happen within really small parameters when you give yourself these boundaries. So I did that, and I almost liked the insanity of the idea that I'm going to be someone who only works with those two things until the day I die. But again, I've changed a lot, and I've gotten a little bit more open-minded about things. And so I really can't tell, and I miss it. And sometimes in my studio, I still do love to paint, but I'll do it as gifts for people. Online, I also do little quick contests where I'll draw something really quickly on a postcard if somebody gets the answer right to some trivia I would throw out there. Just because I love mail, I love sending mail, and so anyway, I'm getting off on a different tangent, but so I do think so, probably, knowing me, because every time I set up one of these rules, I do it, and then I stop doing it, so. And again, I plan on hopefully living a long time, so. And I really miss watercolor right now, so it's interesting to think of what could happen with that. Do you hope I do?
Yes.
Okay. There we go. We got one vote.
I'd like to see you do some watercolor.
You would? Oh, we'll see. Maybe there's something in the air. Anyone else would like that? Raise your hand. Oh, clapping and everything. All right, you guys, look out. Tally, let's set up a watercolor show. Yes.
Okay, one pencil, but only one lead, or do you use 6 different weights of lead, or is it HB forever?
It's 2B and HB. That's the only two I use. Those are the ones I love. And in some of that kind of more fuzzy stuff in that interim period, I did do, you can see let's see, even some of these have these backgrounds where I did use a big graphite. So see that kind of fuzzy looking stuff in the background? That was one of those graphite chunks that I did all over the paper, but I already had it all planned out, so I left those white spots, and then I smudged it with like those chamois or whatever they're called. But yeah, I only used 2B and HB, so I actually have 2 different pencils, one 2B, one HB that I have set up. So I did kind of lie now that I think about it. You caught me. I'm a liar. No, thank you. But that is an important one. That's a good question. The lighter leads are they just break so easy too. And I push hard. Yeah.
How many sketches do you go through before you finalize your final?
That's a good question, and I wish I could hold this up for you to see it. Usually I would say I always do thumbnail sketches, and I would say probably 20 to 40 for each drawing I end up doing. And that's a great question, because that's another big point about my work, is that my work doesn't change once I start it. It's figured out on a small scale, and those thumbnails are like that big, tiny, but they're really detailed, and I know exactly what's happening then. And so then, and I like this about my life too. This is another thing that just works with my personality. So then I get the paper on the wall, and I just carry out the work. It's like real labor. That's when my mind gets to listen to all of this TV and radio and plot the next series of drawings. It's a really good I have to say, it's really nice. I don't know why I like it so much, but it works for me. I like the idea of just working. I'm just a worker. I like to do things. I like being busy and working, so. Yeah, right here.
Do you work on more than one piece at a time?
Hi, I just saw who you were, Cindy. No, I don't actually. Very rarely. Mainly from anxiety. Like I'm always so focused on getting something done that even if I try to kind of go over here, that's the sucky part of my process, is that I can't really do 2 at once. And I like put up a time chart and a thing where I'm like, you have this many days to finish this. And I count my hours, and I know how long it takes to draw like a square inch when it's really a lot of labor, when it's full of stuff. So I wish I could. Yeah.
Say when you do a wall like that, does it take days, hours, months, a year? What does it take?
A lot of the big ones usually take anywhere from like 4 months to 9 months. And then, like I said, that one drawing took 3 years. But then the ones that are, like this one took me maybe 5 weeks. And then like this, which I consider one of my best drawings I've ever made, this only took me maybe 4 days or something, because it's not as big, it's this big. So, and this is a nice size in between these big ones. Because I mean, that sets up, these large ones, they have an impact that I desire, but they put us all, everybody I work with, in a bad position in a lot of ways, because they take so long, so then I'm not able to make these that there's just, it's a slow process, So yeah, and then I also make small drawings, but even those take a little while. It's just kind of, I say I'm slow, but I'm working all the time. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
So I'm so super intrigued by the chapel and the idea of doing that. And I was wondering, would you still be working in graphite? Because how would you do that to translate to those curved surfaces? Like what's your plan there?
I'd just curve the paper. I would figure it out. Even if it had to be, I would be able to figure it out. I don't know why I'm so confident about that, but for instance, even if I couldn't get a framer to do arc on the top or something, and And by the way, it doesn't necessarily have to have those, but I want it to. I would find a way through the image to make that shape. If it was framed all the way rectangular, I would find a really smart way to make it still look like that. And then it would probably be a series of like little ones on top that kind of tear down. I mean, and I really have been working on sketches. I'm glad you brought it up because I kind of was thinking before I came in, why am I about to talk about this crazy plan when I haven't done anything yet? But it sounds like you're interested, so I'm excited. I need somebody to be. No, but I really, and I've done so many multi-paneled pieces, I kind of feel like I'm at least pretty prepped for it. But that will be me really relying on a great framer, and you know, the piece would be as much theirs as mine in a lot of ways. Yeah.
How are you getting up to the top of these pieces that you're drawing on if they're tacked up to the wall?
Yeah, they're
like on some sort of platform or something that you built?
Yeah, depending on the room and the piece, I had, I don't know what, basically a ladder for the most part. Just a small ladder, and actually it's better on my body if I'm standing. Like the problem is when I'm low or sitting on the floor, I've gotten all sorts of problems because of all the time I've spent sitting on the floor like that. But my favorite is when I'm here, like when the work is right here and I can just stand and stretch my legs. But yeah, just a ladder, that's all. I think I had scaffolding at one location during Art Pace, during a residency, because it was so high up. But yeah, I just stand on a ladder, which is probably dangerous. I got to do this while I'm still 40. Oh, sorry. Since you already asked, can I ask her really quick, and then you next?
Do you have issues with carpal tunnel or any sort of hand issue?
No, luckily I early on knew to stretch in various ways, and I always stretch my fingers backwards. Oh, sorry. And I move my arm around in weird ways. It's more the other parts of my body that get messed up. I hope that stays that way. Yes.
I was just curious how you go from art to business, because you obviously put your work out there. Most artists have a hard time making that transition. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's just two different parts of my brain that I have to separate a lot, I think. I mean, I don't know how well I do it, but I mean, for instance, just returning emails for the business side of what I do used to be really difficult for me, and sometimes it really is. So I just limit it to a certain time of the day where I do it and I get done what I can. And if I don't, I'll come back to it the next day. I mean, I just kind of do my best, and I'm really fortunate to have amazing people I work with who, you know, just are great. I'm just very lucky. But I don't know how I do it. I think I'm naturally pretty, my dad is a great business guy. He taught me how to do my taxes early on. Like I'm a real nerd too, you know, like I'm really good at that. So I'm very organized, and so that kind of comes naturally to me, but I am very interrupted by the business side a lot in my brain. Like I just have to tune it out, and that's why I also have TV on all the time to just make me think of all those dumb things I'm watching rather than what I have to do next or what someone's expecting of me. I don't know if that's a great explanation, but I hope it kind of is. It's hard, and it's hard for me. It really is.
Did you study existentialism and kind of invest in that philosophy in literature, or is that just sort of naturally your go-to?
I think it's just naturally my go-to. I read a lot of existential books. I just can't say it, so apparently it's not my area of expertise. But no, I mean, it was kind of an interest early on, but not really, to be honest with you. It's just who I am. I've just kind of always been this way, where I'm pretty cheery for the most part, and it's my goal to be pleasant to people as much as I can. But I see the world in a really, I don't understand why we're all here, basically, and it upsets me a lot. And it has since I was little. It all has seemed very absurd to me. So, yeah, I mean, I'm right in line with that philosophy, but I never studied it. I just really think I'm built this way. Also, I watched a lot of movies thanks to my dad, and I hope you don't get mad at me for calling you out, but the first movie I ever watched was The Elephant Man by David Lynch. And I told him the story recently because I'm so grateful for it. And I was 3.5 or 4. And then the next movie I remember watching, sorry, Dad. Again, this is praising you, though. Again, I'm Catholic, and I saw The Exorcist when I was about 5. So I think that also had something to do with some of it, and I'm really glad, though, because I just am glad. I don't know why. So, Dad, thank you, and I'm sorry for embarrassing. But my dad always watched good movies. And I love staying up at night. That's another thing. I'm a night owl. I want to watch movies all night, and he always did, and it was some of my favorite stuff, so. Thanks, Dad. My dad's been a big influence on all of this. Do we have time for one more question? Okay, yes.
I think you ought to praise your family, your mother, your father, and your grandmother. You truly produced a work of art.
That's so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. That is the sweetest thing I've ever heard, and I don't know how I'm so lucky, and you see they're all here, and my amazing Aunt Sam tonight too came from Nebraska, and I will tell you a quick story. When I was in college, I got really scared, like, how am I gonna make money? I knew I wanted to be an artist. It's all I ever wanted. From the time I was little, I proclaimed that. And I called my parents, and I was like, you guys, I think I was 3 years into school. I was like, I guess I'm gonna switch to art education. I think I better, set this up. I need to have something. I need to teach, I need to make money. And my mom, again, every story about her tonight is her crying, I'm sorry. We cry a lot. So she cried a little bit and she said, no, Robyn, you're an artist, like you can do, and we didn't my grandma did teach us a lot about painting and landscape painting, but not in a way, we didn't go to museums or anything. We're not like a bunch of art people in our family by any means, but their belief in me shocked even me and still does to this day. I don't know how I got so fortunate, but I would, obviously I wouldn't be here at all if they didn't have me, but not many artists are lucky enough to have their parents be excited about them doing this crazy shit, Thank you, guys. Thank you. Is that it? Thank you.